Hello everyone and welcome to Warrior Chat. I'm so happy you're with us. My name is Wayne McCullough. I'm the Director of Administrative Services and Board Secretary here at Southern York County School District. With us is Mrs. Susan Green. Mrs. Green is the business manager here for the school district, and we have a very important topic that we're kind of kicking off the budget season already for 2012-2013, so we want to share some of that information related to what goes into developing the budget for 2012-2013. So we're happy you're with us. I think we have some very, very important information to share with you. First of all, statewide, but also locally, Mrs. Green, 2011-2012, our current budget year, was probably a very unique year for school districts in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, extremely unique. We had quite a large cut in state and federal funding to school districts, probably unprecedented in history, cut in educational funding. So we really had to make some changes, both us and statewide, huge changes in education.
We want to share, we'll ask Mr. Harris students here to put up this slide. But here's some background information, and I think it just does a nice job really putting it in perspective. But 2011-2012 was, as you said, the most significant loss in school revenue, and that's combining federal, state, and local, ever. And you know, when you put the word ever at the end, then all of a sudden it gives you a different perspective of really what's happened. And that happened at a time when there was increased expenses for school districts also.
Yes, we experienced increased expenses in retirement, and that's state mandated, so really there's not a whole lot we can do about retirement expenses. And then also, you know, healthcare expenses are ever increasing.
Yeah, and the result for us here in Southern York County School District was, in order to balance our budget within our taxing indexes given to us by the, from the state, we had to reduce it by over $1.5 million of existing programs. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we basically put our heads together and knew we had to do that. That was something we had to do. So we had wage freezes. The staff came forward and agreed to wage freezes, which we were very proud of last year. We also had reductions in services and staff members. We cut, over the last several years, we've cut 19 positions and also additional 14 coaches. We have made changes to transportation. You know, the list goes on, but we basically made some pretty extreme changes. Here's
statewide. In public education in Pennsylvania, there were over 14,000 jobs lost in Pennsylvania public schools last year. And what I find interesting in that is more than half of them were furloughs, layoffs, different strategy than what we tried to do here at Southern York.
Yeah, basically what we tried to do is we actually start our budget process very early, very early in the process. So last year in November, we knew that we were going to have cuts. Not as deep as we found out we were going to have in March, but we knew we were going to have deep cuts. So starting in November of last year, every time we got a retirement or a resignation from any staff member, we evaluated right away whether or not we were going to fill those positions. And actually starting in that time frame, we didn't fill positions as people left. In the December-January timeframe. So that allowed us to not have to actually furlough folks. We could do it through attrition and retirements and people leaving.
The end result for us was 19 less staff, which included support staff, teachers, administrators, as well as 14 less coaching positions to support the athletic program, but statewide 14,000. The thing I find the paradox about that is, in a time when the employment numbers are down, and a goal of federal and state governments through the stimulus funding was to increase or to help support and decrease unemployment rates, the opposite happened in public schools with the reduced funding. Probably no surprise, because school districts are really driven by staff. I mean, that's what costs money in school districts for the most part.
Really, you know, there's only a certain point you can go cutting other things. The bulk of the money comes from staff.
Yeah. Again, this is statewide, and this was a survey that was conducted by the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials. And again, we'll show you this slide. But in addition to the staff cuts, school districts statewide also made operational cuts. And do you want to walk down through those, Mrs. Green, as we show them the slide up on the screen?
70% of school districts increased class size. About 44% reduced electives. So that will be the things in like the middle school and high school where you get to choose the art classes, the home ec classes, what we know as home ec, it's family and consumer science. Now those types of classes, they reduce those electives for students. 35% decreased tutoring. 19% of school districts eliminated summer school. 55% restricted student field trips. 31% restructured extracurricular activities. 10% actually closed buildings, and we're hearing that's continuing. 37% deferred maintenance, and about 16% delayed school construction and renovation projects.
I think it's interesting, but I think it is fair to say that the reduced funding has impacted urban school districts really a larger scale than it has other school districts throughout Pennsylvania, the suburban and rural school districts. And the closing schools, I just heard, for example, Pittsburgh's considering closing an additional 10 schools to meet their budget deficit this year. Deferred maintenance is one. All these are amazing, but the deferred maintenance number, what catches my attention there is that's probably a number that comes back and costs more money later. Because you have expenses in other ways that seem to compound.
Right. I mean, you're going to pay for something. If you defer maintenance, you're going to pay for something. Eventually, you're going to have roof leaks. You're going to have those kinds of things. So, and more costs associated with that.
No, you're right. And again, this is what's happened statewide, not our strategy here at Southern York County. For example, the delayed school construction. As you know, we're involved right now in a Friendship Elementary School project that's very, very important to us. A project that's important to us primarily because of increased enrollment in the Cadores Township, Glen Rock Borough area. We have, almost 520 students in Friendship Elementary School that currently has a PDE, a Pennsylvania Department of Education, rated capacity of slightly more than 400, so it's already over capacity. In addition to that, we thought it was a good time to build for a variety of reasons.
Right, we were able last December to issue our bonds at a much, much lower rate, almost historically low rates, and also we were able to go out for bid in a time when people needed to be put to work, and also prices are down for construction. So it was a good time for us to be able to do it since we did have the need, and we really did need to build onto the building.
Yep. So I think it was really a good time. The bids came in well. Like you said, the interest rates for borrowing the money were outstanding. The need for the building exists already. So I think it's that would have been a huge mistake for us not to move ahead with that Friendship Elementary School project. A few graphs here, and again, we'll ask for this graph to go up on the screen for you to see. But what you heard in the media was that the result of the state and federal funding sent school districts back a few years to prior year funding levels. I'm not sure if I can say it, but I think I got that out. But this graph shows that. You want to go through that a little bit, please? Yeah,
the state and federal funding for us, the subsidy that we get is actually, you can see on the graph, we're back below 06, 07, more to like an 05, 06 time frame for our funding for 11, 12. And the only funding that doesn't take into consideration is the property tax relief, because again, we lost that money, so it wasn't a gain, and also the retirement, because our retirement's going up faster than the subsidy, twice as fast as the subsidy, our expense. So we took those two pieces out, but other than that, state and federal subsidy is down below the 5, 6 levels.
Yeah, that's amazing when you think about it, because again, you hear in the media, on average in school districts in PA drop back a few years, but gosh, that's going back 5, 6 years for us to a funding level. Certainly the expenses are not identical to 2005, 2006.
Right, which means we can able to provide less service than we were able to provide back then.
True. The one of our local revenue sources is earned income, and I think this slide is really really reflects what's happened with earned income on a local level here at Southern York County since 2006, 2007. Even though this graph shows our revenue as a result of taxing earned income, you could argue it reflects earned income in Southern York County School District also.
Right, it was going up until about 08, 09, and then we have a decline the last couple years. We have a little increase in 11, 12. We're not sure if we're going to realize that or not, but it's basically showing what's happening to the folks that live in the community. The revenue is going down. The number of people aren't, but the number of people working and their what they're making is going down.
Well, certainly shows when the recession impacted our local community, and you know, we certainly were not. We certainly didn't miss the recession at a local, from a local economic standpoint. We may have drugged just slightly behind what the nation reflected, and I'm not so sure why. If it's because we're closer to the Baltimore, Washington urban area, I'm not sure what that was, but certainly the recession has impacted our ability to raise revenue from an earned income standpoint. Real estate transfer nationwide has obviously been a problem, but we've experienced that locally also.
Right, and basically what real estate transfer tax is when a property is sold in the school district, 1% of the purchase price or sale price is taxed, and we get half of that, and then the county gets the other half. And basically you can tell from the graph it's declined because of the sales declining, but also the sale prices are declining. So the two pieces together shows the huge decline.
Yeah. Temporary earnings is kind of an interesting statistic. As you know, our tax bills go out July 1, and Southern York County School District people pay their taxes. We have a good collection rate, as well as most of them pay them on a timely basis. So from a revenue standpoint, our revenue comes in early in the year, but our expenses are relatively flat. So we certainly invest that very conservatively, but with the low interest rates, it's had a big impact.
Right, and we were getting, you know, 3, 4, 5%. We're now getting about 25 basis points or 1/4%. And so again, that reflects we might not even hit $50,000 this year.
The question, well, all told, that's about $2 million, and that really reflects what's happened to our budget over the last 2 years, where we've reduced over $2 million of programs and staff in order to balance the school district's budget. It hasn't been easy. It really hasn't. I think it's. I guess we're careful not to sound like, or not to sound like we're crying wolf or Chicken Little, but on the other hand, it hasn't been easy.
Right, and I think one of the things is in Southern York, you know, you just do what has to be done, and so you know, a lot of the cuts aren't seen from the outside because we make sure that, you know, we're still doing everything we need to do. But there have been a lot of cuts made and a lot of things done in order to make things continue to go smoothly.
Yeah, the question is, if you had a crystal ball on the table, when will that all turn around?
Well, I'm going to cross my fingers.
All right.
And hopefully by the 13-14, when we're starting to do the budget for 13-14 at this time next year, hopefully we'll start to see some upward movement, some more home sales, some more interest earnings, those types of things.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Well, hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully.
No, I agree. I think in this article, which actually came from ChicagoTribune.com, basically says that school districts should not expect during this budget year, current budget year, or the 12-13 budget year, to see really improvement in their revenues. And the earliest to expect to see it would be, this says 2013, then the scary part, or later. And so we're hoping again that some of the trends we were seeing just actually in the last couple of days with the stock market, and you hate to say that because this tape will play off and on, but I think the truth of the matter is we'll have a little bit of a roller coaster ride for a short time until all of a sudden the economic indicators do dig in and we start seeing some improvement from the wide. I've always said when you put together a budget, you really need to look at least 3 years. One, how we performed last year, how we're performing this year, and then what we should expect. So let's start off with, how did we perform last year, year 2010-11?
Well, 2010-11 we performed very well. We had planned to use $1.4 million in fund balance in order to balance the budget, and we actually only ended up using about $600,000. So no, we didn't use any. We actually ended up with a surplus of $600,000, excuse me. And that was due to what we were talking about. We knew early on in that budget year that things weren't getting any better, that they were actually getting worse. So we pulled all our administrators together and we said we need to continue to cut things. Don't spend all of your allocations, don't rehire staff, those types of things. So we were able to generate that surplus. We had a couple nice things happen with debt refundings, those kinds of things. So we were able to generate a surplus, and we're very proud of that because that was a big team effort to make sure going into the 11-12 budget that we actually would have that fund balance to balance things out again. So we did very well for 10-11.
Good, and I'm so glad you said that, and I think our public, that needs to be a point of emphasis here that we make. is really the entire school district team should be congratulated for that. Our administrators, our teachers, all of our staff members, because we spent $1 million less than we had anticipated and budgeted, and exactly that. We said absolutely we cannot buy anything, we cannot spend a penny. That's not absolutely critical today. And the results are very, very important, and we needed to do that. That's important because that's a surplus then that can be applied for future years until our revenue stream does improve slightly, and to make sure. You should know this, our priority the whole time is to make sure we maintain the outstanding educational program here at Southern York County School District. That's been the priority. So we talk these cuts, we have reduced supply counts and so forth. But again, with the goal of absolutely maintaining this outstanding educational program. I mention that because I know that's very, very important to you, our folks here in the community. Mm-hmm. What are we projecting this year, 11-12? We're halfway through.
We are halfway through. We received a little additional funding that we found out about in July from the state. And so our budget was already closed, we were already done, so we actually reduced our use of fund balance to about $1 million. So we said we're going to use $1 million to balance the budget, and we project to actually only use about $441,000 of that. Okay. Again, as soon as things were not turning around, the tax duplicate was not as high as we thought it was going to be. We're seeing that transfer taxes have not gone up over the summer. Summer's a big time for that to go up. We, again, told all staff, all administrators, please don't spend anything you don't need. So we actually are planning on only using about $441,000 of the $1 million that we thought we were going to use. So we're ahead of the game, and we're doing well with that.
Okay. So that brings us to 2012-13 budget development. That's the process we're in. And just to give you an idea, a sense of the timing, this is December, and we promised to do Warrior Chats almost on a monthly basis here. Midway through January, the end of January, we'll do an updated Warrior Chat for you, so you are aware, our public, about the budget development process and the impact to you, but also to our schools. So we'll continue to keep you updated on that. But at this point, the school board really had one decision to make that they had to make at this point. Can you describe that to us, please?
Right. Act 1 was put into place a couple years ago, and I think in 2006. And basically what Act 1 says is you either need to stay within the PDE index, Department of Ed's index for the year for taxing purposes, or you have to do a preliminary budget process that has to start in January. So our board voted in December, on December 1st, to stay within the PDE index, which means we are not able to tax above 2%. 2% is our index. So basically the only decision made for the budget process at this point is that we will not tax above 2%.
Okay. The interesting thing, not to go into great detail and explain the whole Act 1 index and how that formula is developed, but just to give you some background, it's a combination of really what inflation is happening throughout the state of Pennsylvania, number one, but also the second part of the formula is what the cost is, what schools are experiencing from a cost standpoint. And because school districts statewide reduced their budgets last year, the index statewide took a little bit higher inflationary number and drove it down, because school districts cut budgets last year statewide. Probably not intended when they built the formula, but it's really how it worked out this year.
Right. I think the formula, that indicator on the school districts was actually meant to bring the index up, and it actually did the opposite. Okay.
Pretty much when you put a budget together, you look at your revenue. We've talked about a little bit about that from the past, and expense side, but let's talk about briefly what we are expecting from a revenue standpoint as we build the budget for 2012-2013.
Well, the revenue's pretty simple this year. It's not going up at all. Our local revenue is very flat. There doesn't seem to be any indicators that numbers are going up. Some may be going down a little, some up a teeny bit, but it actually is going to level out to be pretty flat for local revenue. State revenue at this point, we're unaware of. We won't know till at least mid-February what the governor's even thinking, and probably much later than that what actually gets voted into law. Right. So at this point we're budgeting flat funding for state, and federal's actually declining slightly due to a lot of the federal programs being cut.
Okay. From an expense side, what are some of the major players in the expense side of the equation?
This year, the major players are retirement again. Again, that's driven by statute, so that's what we pay. And the other major players are health insurance. We did experience a pretty large premium increase this year for health insurance.
Okay. So it'll be a challenge as we put this budget together. But again, our commitment to you, we're a couple commitments. And I promise you, these are things that we will do. Number one is, first of all, we're going to communicate throughout the entire process and keep you informed about the budget process for two reasons. Number one, I know the educational program is extremely important to all of us in our community. It has been. We have a strong history in Southern York County School District where our people expect and want just an outstanding educational program, and we're going to make sure we keep that going. But number two, I promise you that we will spend every penny wisely and make sure that the money we spend has an impact on our educational program and ultimately the quality of the education our children have. So we'll keep those things going, and we'll also make sure that we keep you informed throughout the process. Any final comments?
Nope, not at this point.
Okay. Well, very good. So again, we'll keep you informed as we go, and we appreciate your interest in the school district and the finances as it relates to developing the 2012-2013 Southern York County School District budget. So for Isabel Dwoznik, I didn't get that right. Dwanzik? Thank you. There, I got it. Isabel Dwanzik. Thank you, Isabel. And Curtis Napke, for Mr. Tim Hare, their teacher, and also Mr. Mark Rill, who is our director or coordinator of marketing and public relations. For Mrs. Susan Green, our business manager, I'm Wayne McCullough saying, I'll see you next time.